Hi, my name is Adam Kegley, and I'm the Manager of Global Partnerships at the Global Healthy Living Foundation. I'd like to thank you for tuning into the Strong Bones and Me Patient Series. The Strong Bones and Me Story Series aims to raise awareness on osteoporosis, fracture prevention, and post-fracture care services by sharing real-life stories from people affected by osteoporosis and the providers who treat them. They'll share their experience living with the condition, its effects, methods of prevention and care in order to help inform and educate others so that living with osteoporosis can still mean living fully, actively, and well. Today, we're joined by Fiona from Australia, who lives with osteoporosis, and she's here to share her story and put a spotlight on the condition in hopes to help inform and educate others about it. Hi, Fiona. If you want, we can jump right in and start with you telling us a bit about yourself and maybe the conditions you live with other than osteoporosis.
My name is Fiona. I'm 39. I have rheumatoid arthritis and I've had it since I was 10 years old. I also have diabetes, uveitis, and high blood pressure problems. I live in Melbourne, Australia.
And when exactly did you first learn you had osteoporosis in addition to your other conditions?
Before I was diagnosed, I had a few breaks. So I guess we should have suspected it a bit earlier. I was in hospital for a few big problems and they just did every single test imaginable and it just came up. And then, from then it was just, they put me on the medication for the osteoporosis and told me I learned a lot more about it. But I wouldn't have picked it up if I hadn't already been in hospital. And then, since then I've had a couple more breaks, but it was the ones that before that were probably a bit worse because, I didn't really know anything about it and it probably those ones could have been avoided. So it was just from like a fall here and there and a car accident and things that probably wouldn't have broken the bones if I didn't have the osteoporosis.
I see. So you didn't really know about osteoporosis before you'd already had multiple fractures?
No, I think I just associated it with old people, but I didn't really know anything about it.
Yeah, we hear that a lot, unfortunately. And when you got diagnosed with osteoporosis, did your doctor talk to you about starting treatment at all or different options to protect or possibly build bone back? And in addition to that, were there changes to your other treatments you were following?
I started an osteoporosis medication in 2017, and I've had that every 6 months since. But I think that's the only change. I mean, we've made changes a lot over the years with all my medications, but I don't think it's been related to the osteoporosis.
I see. And did your doctor tell you anything about possible reasons why you may have developed osteoporosis?
I think they told me it was to do with all the medications I'm on and the low immune system. I don't really know exactly why I've got it, but I assume it's the medications.
I see. Yeah, bone density loss and risk of osteoporosis have actually been linked to quite a few different conditions and sometimes treatments taken for them as well. How long had you been on your treatments since you were diagnosed with arthritis at such a young age?
10. I was 10 when I was diagnosed, and I was 10 when I was first on steroids and penicillin. So basically my whole life, 29 years.
And did anyone mention anything about the risks related to bone loss in that regard or about developing osteoporosis?
No. Well, if they did, I didn't notice it. It wasn't told forcefully or anything. So it may have been mentioned, but I just don't remember. And that's also a part of the problem with being diagnosed so early with all the rheumatoid stuff is I let my mum took over the management of a lot of it for a long time. So maybe they told her, but then as an adult, I didn't know anything about it until I was diagnosed 2017.
I can imagine it probably would have been helpful to have been told a bit more about the risks there.
I wish I'd been told more about how high risk prednisolone is and the steroids. I knew that it wasn't good to be on high doses long term, but I didn't know it was like the osteoporosis. I didn't know that that was so much more likely, because for a long time my rheumatoid was very badly controlled, and it was very severe for a long time. So it was sort of needed to have so much steroids, but yeah, it's hard to know where the line is to draw. Yeah, so I wish I'd known that steroids were really, really bad for you, and yeah, necessary evil.
I think you're hitting on something really important to note here, and it's particularly because one thing that could very much help people monitor their bones while living with other conditions and or being on treatments that may increase osteoporosis risk is to have a Dexa scan. The scan that tells you the density of your bones or signals possible bone density loss. Had you ever had a Dexa scan before you'd been diagnosed with osteoporosis, or did you know anything about them?
The Dexa screen, that's the scan, and that tells you your phone score. No, I didn't know anything about any of that until about 7 years ago. I was about 2017 when I got diagnosed, and I think my bones are just a bit fragile, like they are with osteoporosis. If most normal people had these same knocks and things happen to them, they probably wouldn't have broken their bones.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's something we hear rather often, that, someone hasn't had a Dexa scan until after they've already fractured once or twice or even multiple times, and by then they've already developed osteoporosis.
Maybe I wish I'd known that I should be having those scans from a lot earlier. I've had so many health problems for most of my life, but I've only had the scans in the last few years. So I wish we'd been on top of that a bit earlier, maybe even since a teenager or child. I don't know how young you should be when you start, but definitely way younger than I was.
For sure, and that would have possibly had an impact on how many fractures you have experienced. Actually, how many fractures have you had, if you don't mind me asking? And did you recognize them as fractures right away?
Well, actually, a few of them, I thought they were just my normal arthritis pain. So I would go months and months with them. And then after a while, we'd be like, no, I think this is a bit different. Let's do an x-ray just to be sure. And they'd be like, oh, yeah, you've got a couple of breaks there. Look, they're starting to heal. But we should have given some attention to that earlier. So it's really hard to tell what's a break from osteoporosis or what's just arthritis pain, because a lot of the time it's quite similar. Sometimes you get, like, even the two in my ankles, I could still walk on them, but they didn't heal right because I didn't have those protective boots or do anything about them at the beginning. Like even the finger and I think I did actually go to hospital for some of those breaks, but like the ankle in particular, they did x-rays and there was so much damage already in those joints that they couldn't tell what was broken and what was that damage. It's hard to tell sometimes. And then years later or months later, they can do more x-rays and they can see where it's healing, and they can tell that it was an actual break.
We hear that from some patients as well, that sometimes they don't know a fracture has even occurred, or they think it might be pain from another condition they might be living with. I suppose after hearing you share all this and listening to your story, I'd really be interested to know what advice you might give to others who have osteoporosis and are especially at risk of experiencing a second fracture, after they've already experienced one before. Especially because, maybe these are people who know that they have osteoporosis, and maybe they're people who don't know they have osteoporosis. What would you say to them?
I would definitely recommend getting the scans done early. I would try and find out how young you should be when you start getting those scans, because maybe it's not so relevant for children. I'm not sure, but definitely start getting the scans as early as possible, and to have discussions about your dosages of the steroids, because I wish I hadn't been on such high doses for all those years. And maybe we could have tried other treatments to manage the RA instead of just throwing steroids at it.
That sounds like great advice to me. And I'd take that a step further, actually, and ask you what you think doctors should know or do to help people manage their osteoporosis as best as possible. Do you have any thoughts there?
Yes, I think it should be standard that if anyone has an autoimmune condition or if they're on long-term steroids, that they should be having these regular checks, these scans. That should just be standard. I don't know why it wasn't.
Definitely. I think you've hit on some really important points and pieces of advice. And, I think just to wrap up, I'd want to ask, what does good bone health mean to you? And what would you want others to know about keeping their bones strong?
Yeah, just not to be scared of breaking things just from knocking into a wall or something. I wish I had better bone health, and I think I took it for granted all those years before osteoporosis. I think, we should be putting more of a focus on building up that bone strength and being even preventative care. Like if you're being put onto steroids or you've got RA or something similar, that it should be on the checklist of things that you're aware of and looking forward, like preventing it and making sure that you're building up those bones. And because all these breaks over the years, they've actually impacted my life quite a bit. And if I hadn't had some of these breaks, like particularly my wrist, that's caused a lot of problems. I haven't been able to do a lot because of that. So if I had prevented that or been a bit more aware of potential risks, maybe I wouldn't have had so many problems down the track. So my advice to anyone would be to be more involved and learn as much as possible and talk to the doctors about everything and maybe even take notes and just be more involved. That's the general gist of it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Fiona. We really appreciate your openness, and we're just so glad to be able to share your story for others around the world to see and hear. Thank you again so much.
Happy to help.
Thank you again for tuning in to GHLF's Strong Bones and Me story series. There's a lot of power in knowledge sharing, especially from different cultures and walks of life, and we hope that these stories help all of us remember that strong bones mean a strong me.